It's my pleasure to present the result of the CALM study, which is a long story. Actually, we designed this study with Mark almost 10 years ago, showing again how Mark was a visionary. So we know that in Crohn's disease, it's not known whether this concept of tight control, meaning making decision based on monitoring of biomarkers, leads to improved patients' outcomes. So CALM is a prospective, open-label, multi-center, active control phase 3 study designed to evaluate 2 treatment algorithms in patients with Crohn's disease. It was not designed to assess the efficacy of the drug. It's designed to assess algorithm. The first one was a classical, commonly done, clinical management strategy. And the second algorithm was a tight control strategy. And then, in both arms, the therapy was escalated according to pre-specified failure criteria. So this is the design of CALM. So this was a big challenge because first we had to recruit, I don't know if this is working, we have to recruit naive patients. That means naive of immunomodulators and biologics. And you know how difficult it is to recruit those patients even 5 years ago. So all those patients are starting according to ECHO guideline with steroids burst, and then they are tapered until week 9. And then they are randomized to 2 different arms. The first arm, which is a clinical management arm, where the escalation of drug is only driven by the CDI and the use of prednisone. And the tight control arm, where the escalation is driven by CDI, calprotectin, CRP, and prednisone use. That means that even if the patient is doing well at these different visits, in the tight control arm, the drug is escalated if one of biomarker is still high. And the treatment escalation was basically following the same scheme in both arms, meaning that first, no treatment if the patient was able to be weaned off steroids with anything. Then, if he was failing, he received adalimumab induction followed by 40 milligram every other week. Then, if he failed, he was switched to adalimumab weekly. And then, the most intensive regimen was adalimumab weekly plus azathioprine. Starting at these visits, and this is original as well, if the patient was doing well, he was able to de-escalate, for instance, from every week to every other week, or to every week plus azathioprine to every other week plus azathioprine. So some patients were early randomized because they were not able to go up to week 9, because their CDI was more than 220, and then they had more than 4 weeks of steroid treatment, and the investigators thought that it was better to taper rapidly, especially, for instance, when the patient was intolerant to steroids, or if the patient was thinking that this was of the best interest for the patients. And then, when the patient was failing after randomization, and then it was moved to a rescue group. And in the rescue group, patients were moved if they have CDI more than 300 for 2 consecutive visits, 7 days apart, or per investigator discretion. So, elevated CRP, calpro, ulcerations were taken into account, and all those failures were moved to the tight control group. So, these are the failure criteria in both arms. From week -1, which is just before randomization, and then at following visits, week 11, 23, and 35. In the clinical management arm, failure was considered if the CDI decreases by less than 70 points compared with baseline, or was still more than 200. In the tight control arm, at week -1, failure was considered if the CDAI was more than 150, or CRP more than 5, or Calpro more than 250 micrograms per liter, or the patient was still on prednisone. So it was really tight. Then at the following weeks, in the clinical management arm, failure was considered if the CDI decreased less than 100 points compared with baseline, or CDI was still more than 200, and the patient was still on prednisone. And in the tight control arm, again, same criteria as far as CDI, CRP, and Calpro, and the patient need to be weaned off steroids. So again, clinical management only, or management based on symptoms plus biomarkers in the tight control arm. These are the inclusion criteria: adult patients with ileal colonic or ileocolonic Crohn's disease, with moderate to severe Crohn's disease, with or without systemic steroids, and we consider different levels of CDI according to the steroids that the patient received at baseline. All patients, and this is very important, of course, had to have active endoscopic Crohn's disease as defined by the CDIS more than 6 and a sum of CDIS subscore more than 6 in at least one segment with ulcers. CRP had to be more than 5 and or Calpro more than 250 micrograms per gram at screening. So this is key. All those patients were included with clinical evidence of disease activity and objective evidence based on biomarkers and endoscopy. There were some exclusion criteria, such as previous or current biologic or immunomodulator use. Again, all those patients were completely naive, or those who received 2 previous courses of steroids or currently receiving steroids for more than 3 months before screening. The primary endpoint was endoscopy. It was a target. Actually, it was endoscopy killing as defined by CDIS less than 4 and no deep ulcers. And there were a number of secondary endpoints that you can see here, such as deep remission, biologic remission, mucosal healing as defined only by the CDIS, mucosal healing in all segments, complete endoscopic remission, which is a very tough endpoint, meaning CDIS 0, endoscopic response, which is a decrease of the CDIS of at least 5 points, and very relevant clinical endpoint, of course, the steroid-free remission. So this is a patient disposition in CALM. So we screened 460 patients and enrolled 244. Many of them didn't meet the inclusion criteria, for instance, at endoscopy, which is quite well known. And they were randomized to the clinical management arm or the tight control arm. Interestingly, more than 55 or approximately 75% of patients had study completion, which I think is quite remarkable for a study. And on the right-hand side, you have the different reasons for discontinuation, such as adverse event, withdrawing of consent, loss of follow-up, of lack of efficacy. So this is the baseline characteristics of CALM. The most remarkable, of course, is disease duration. I think this is the earliest population ever studied in a clinical trial with an anti-TNF, because the mean disease duration was less than 1 year in the clinical management arm and just more than one year in the tight control arm. So very early patients. All patients had active disease based on CDAI, CDIS. As you can see, the disease location is as usual. And you have the patient with Calpro and patient with high CRP. Actually, more than 80% of patients in both arms had elevated Calpro, and same is true for CRP, 84% and 78%. So quite active patients. And you have the percentage of smokers and the IBDQ, quality of life index, which was comparable in both groups. So this is the primary endpoint of CALM at 48 weeks, which was highly significant. the percentage of endoscopy killing was 46% at 1 year in the tight control arm, which is quite remarkable if you compare with everything that has been observed so far with all drugs, as compared to 30% in the clinical management arm. So higher rates of mucosal healing and no deep ulcerations was observed in early Crohn's disease when treating to target and treating with these biomarkers was compared with symptom-driven clinical management alone. The study was also strongly positive for a number of secondary endpoints, such as deep remission, defined as a clinical remission, no steroids and endoscopy killing, biological remission which combine CRP, Calpro, and endoscopy, mucosal healing just defined by the CDIS, and there was superiority, but it was not significant for mucosal healing in all segments, complete endoscopic remission, which is also very tough to attain, and endoscopic response, because actually all patients were treated, and endoscopic response was an easier endpoint to reach. So again, most important, higher rates of mucosal healing, and this very important endpoint of deep remission was observed in the tight control arm. So very important and relevant clinical endpoint, which is steroid-free remission, and starting very early at week 11 through the end of the study, week 48, patients in the tight control arm were in steroid-free remission much more often than patients in the clinical management arm, which is very relevant for as a clinical endpoint. So this is a very important slide to understand. It's maybe a little bit complicated. So let me walk you through this slide. These are the different time of the study. So week 0, randomization, week 12, week 24, and week 36. So treatment could be changed at any point. So the color codes represent different regimen. The gray is no treatment. Then you have light blue adalimumab every other week, which could be from the beginning, or adalimumab every other week coming from patients who de-escalated from adalimumab every week. Then you have adalimumab every other week plus azathioprine, adalimumab every week, and the most intensive, adalimumab every week plus azathioprine. And actually, the most important message, just by looking at this slide, is that it's very clear that in the tight control arm, which is on the right, patients were accelerated much earlier. I mean, the treatment was stepped up much earlier in the tight control arm as compared to the clinical management arm. For instance, at the end of the study, as you can see, all those patients in the clinical management arm were still on adalimumab every other week, while the treatment was much more intensive in the tight control arm. So this is important also to know why patients were escalated. And in the tight control arm, at basically all visits, the most important driver for escalating was calprotectin, followed by CRP, by CDI, and the prednisone use. In the clinical management arm, the most important driver was actually the need for prednisone, followed by the CDI. So what you can expect is that because we are introducing a more intensive treatment earlier and globally more drugs within 1 year, what we could expect would be more side effects in the tight control arm. Actually, this was not at all the case, and even when you look at the number of serious infections, the number was higher in the clinical management arm as compared to the tight control arm. And basically, there was no new signal. The safety data are very comparable to what has been observed with adalimumab so far. So to conclude, this is the first study to demonstrate that a tight control approach using objective data, using biomarkers, is improving outcomes in Crohn's disease compared with symptom-driven care only. So managing patients with Crohn's disease by clinical symptoms alone may not adequately control the underlying inflammation. And biomarkers, which are very simple to use, can guide treatment dose increases that lead to superior endoscopic and clinical outcomes. And finally, the tight control approach did not lead to increased safety signals.
The first question for you, around 25% of the patients in the tight monitoring group were able to set a step back in the treatment at a certain point in time. Now, these were patients that were in remission. Was that supported by the biomarkers that they were in remission? How long were they in remission? And might it have an impact if we had not decreased treatment in those patients?
This is a good question. I didn't look at that. I suspect that those patients were also in remission by biomarkers, but I don't know for how long. So I answer your question.
Because it was, if you've seen the risankizumab data with the P19 antibody, there the patients who were really in deep remission, endoscopy and clinically, and the drug was basically stopped, they were in remission like for very long on no drug.
Yes, yes.
So I wonder whether these patients, we don't know whether they were in endoscopic remission. Yes. We don't do endoscopies. No. So it would be interesting to look at the biomarkers in these patients.
Good point.
Maybe I have two questions for you. The first is more an interrogation, a philosophic one. What is the difference between the tight control and the T2T?
So yes, I want to clarify that, and this is my fault actually. So again, as you described, Benjamin, so treat to target is actually treat to target, and the target is endoscopy plus clinical remission. Okay. And this study, the CALM study, and actually when it will be published tomorrow, it's tight control. So the tight control is a way to reach the target. Imagine that you are trying to reach the target, you are helped by these biomarkers, which facilitate to reach the
Yeah, I think if anything...
This is a very important point. Thank you for asking.
If CALM is a treat-to-target study, then the target was biomarker remission, basically.
Exactly.
Yes,
and indirectly that led to more.
Biomarkers.
Yeah,
and we can say
because we were treating to basically normalization of biomarker, but the ultimate target was endoscopic healing.
Yeah, there was a readout, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my second question is that the CALM results suggest that we should treat with a tight control strategy all patients with ulceration in the colon?
So this is a very good question. Actually, how can we translate this, the result for this clinical trial in clinical practice? Because this is always
the question.
I think the most important message to me is that you need to monitor patients, not only on symptoms, but with biomarkers. And then, as we are doing, this is this concept of tight control. Because if you are just looking at symptoms, you will miss something. Some patients may progress, it will be under the tip of the iceberg, and then this will lead to damage and disability. So you need to monitor biomarkers and then take your decision based on symptoms and biomarkers. So how will you apply that in clinical practice? So you will measure these biomarkers. When the biomarkers increase, maybe you will repeat, or you will exclude another reason, for instance, if CRP is increasing. Maybe if you want to confirm, you could perform an endoscopy, but this is a red flag. That means that something is not going well in this patient, and you will need to escalate. This is my clinical take-home message.
So we measured two biomarkers in addition to the symptoms. That you think we could do even better by adding more parameters, for instance, the serum concentrations of drug or other proteomics or so?
No, I think this is very, very good point as well. We will look at the pharmacokinetic data, and maybe if we add the drug monitoring on the top of biomarkers, we can do even better. And as you know, and Gert, you know that better than me, there are now new tools, maybe serological tools only, that may be very good surrogate markers for endoscopic healing. that maybe could be used for the same concept.
So maybe we may end up without endoscopies at the end of the day. I'm sorry for that.
Exactly. Okay.